Hey there, I am Jay Acunzo, host of the Unthinkable podcast. The worst advice I've ever received was someone telling me to be the best at what I do. That's the worst advice I've ever gotten.
That's bad advice, Jay. Be the best? Really? How come?
Well, first of all, the backstory there is I was working at a large tech company where my manager and I had a meeting. And of course, the thing you always want to tell your manager is I said to him, I feel like I'm not really performing that well here. Like, I'm not doing
Oh
my
boy.
best work. And I use the word best. And he said to me very thoughtfully, I thought at the time, well, Jay, you're early to this whole content marketing thing. You might be able to be the best content strategist in the world. And I said, well, but I'm more of a creator. I am not creating. I'm managing a team that's creating. And that's why I'm not doing the work I know I'm capable of. And he said, well, you might be able to be the best content strategist, but you'll probably never ever be the best content creator. There's just too many of them and too many niches and domains and et cetera. And I thought, oh, okay, that's great. And so basically what he was saying was like, shut up and go do your job, man. And I left thinking that was great advice. And after being miserable for the remainder of the year and leaving that company, I look back on that moment and I realize now, what does that even mean to be the best? What does that even mean as a content marketer, content creator? It's self-defined or others define it for you. But either way, there is not some objective ranking that you can just turn to and be like, am I the best? Nope, still have a ways to go. It's awful advice. And it also deters us from focusing on the right stuff, which is how are we creating a career based on our own self-awareness that we find fulfilling, that allows us to do meaningful work? How are we creating something that deeply resonates with other people? So if you're building a whole organization, for example, you spend a lot of time, calories, and budget trying to be the best. We're the number one ranked according to this system and this not gamifiable system whatsoever on this ranking site. We swear it's completely objective, right? We didn't pay Gartner to be on the Magic Quadrant at all. Right. So there's these things that we're doing to try and be bigger, to try and be better, try and be the best. And the worst part of all this, Phil, is that is not how buyers make decisions. People are emotional. People are looking for something that they can feel irrationally biased towards. And then later, maybe justify that with, well, look, we bought that service because objectively they're the largest company, or they had the number one ranked X, Y, or Z according to this service, right? So people don't make decisions based on anything objective or academic. We make emotional decisions. And so we're far better off trying to do things that others can say is their favorite, not
Mm.
the best in some academic competitive set. So that was the worst advice I've ever received, because not only is it not possible to understand are you actually the best or not, it doesn't actually matter when what you want is for the person on the receiving end to look at you with favorability.
Wow. So I thought it was just as simple as just putting that in my LinkedIn profile, Jay. I just put I'm the best at whatever it is that I'm doing this week. I think this week it might be NFTs. Next week's probably crypto. From there, no, that's not how this works, huh?
No, well, I don't know if like how much you're on Twitter, but the Twitter trend in the bio is you put the word I want to be known for guy, the growth guy, the viral threads guy, the writing guy. Like you put that in your bio and you put it in quotes because surely someone else or lots of someone's are calling you that nickname. It's not what do we do in school if someone came up with their own nickname? We'd be like, are you serious? You really came up with your own nickname, right? And this is happening in business social media all the time right now. What are we doing? Well, we're trying to be the best. We're trying to be known as like, no, this topic is mine. I am the best if you like this topic. But as people start to discover your work, if you're tapping the person most reason to care about something, then only then do you have any defensibility. Do you have any favorability? Do people pick you and stick with you no matter what? Someone could come up to you and say, Phil, why are you following this person when this is the person? They're the biggest or the most followed. Say, I don't care, because this one I follow here, this organization, this brand, this cause, this person, they're my favorite. So being someone's
Mm.
favorite, it's like irrational. You are the personal preferred pick for a specific purpose in their lives. And you're defended against anyone bigger or newer or louder or even cheaper. I am going with my favorite. And it doesn't mean like my favorite sports team is the New York Knicks. They're among the worst options you could possibly think about that. In the cohort of options, they're among the worst, but they're my favorite So I'm going to buy their gear. I'm going to buy tickets. I'm going to support them,
Mm.
right? I'm going to evangelize their cause with a caveat that says, get ready for some pain if you're becoming a Knicks fan. But point being, we pick our favorite things. We pick emotionally. We're focused on the wrong stuff, Phil, and it breaks my heart because it ruins a lot of good creative work.
Oh, well, I'm glad to hear that because I don't pay to be on any list, so I'm not the best of anything. Although sometimes now and then, right? Sometimes somebody picks me up on a list, and I'm like, oh, that's interesting. What do you want me to buy? Right? I mean, that's the other challenge. Is even when people say that, I'm like, really? So I like favorite. I can get behind favorite, and I'm going to guess. Does that have to do with resonance, Jay? As we talk about, that's kind of our topic today, right? Is resonance. So if we're resonant, are we favorite, or how does that work?
Yeah, I mean, we have to decouple reach and resonance
Yeah.
because I think those two are
Yep.
cousins that cozy up to each other often, and people sometimes don't understand the differences, or they're at least not weirdos like me who have thought at just endless hours of all hours of the day, what this means. So the difference between reach and resonance: reach is how many people see it, resonance is how much they care. And in marketing, in sales, we're not in the get in front of you business. We're not in the help you see it business. We're not in the be aware of it business. We're in the make you care business. That's what our jobs become. So awareness is a proxy for what we actually want, which is affinity. And we just assume that if more people were aware of us, if only they knew, Phil, about my podcast, they would love it. Well, I think that's a dangerous assumption, and we should get back to focusing on the do they love it question. And by the way, that sparks word of mouth and actions from an existing smaller fan base, which makes the growth we want easier, right? Or even the growth becomes the byproduct of this rabid, passionate, irrationally biased fan base. So that's the difference between reach and resonance. Resonance is how deeply they care. And if you can get to the point where they care so much or you're aligned so deeply, you spark action. So that's really what we're talking about. We're talking about the difference between getting in front of somebody or they're aware of you and your ability to spark action from an audience, a boss, a peer, a client. That's what we're really in the business of doing, is sparking action. So if you want actions from others of any type, you're automatically in need of resonance. And the absolute pinnacle of resonating with someone, back to your question, is they deem you their favorite, right? The thing you care about the most is your favorite, whatever it is, whatever category or purpose we're talking about. So that's like the absolute pinnacle, is if you resonate deeply enough, if they have that irrational bias towards you, they can declare that you are among the few irreplaceable things in their lives. You are among their favorites. And that should be our goal.
Wow. And I would say with all these choices, I would say most of the time we're not finding a favorite. We're just like, oh, that's okay, right? Like
Right.
that. When I eat food and it isn't great, I say, well, that'll make a turd, right? And not like, oh my gosh, that's really great. But I mean, really, that's what I say. And
Sure.
my wife and I, we joke about that because frankly, I haven't found a favorite yet. I just moved to where I'm at. I've only been here about a year now, and I don't have a favorite. But then I find a favorite. Like I found my friends at Wine Regions in Claremont, which is 40 minutes away, but I will drive to them. They have the best selection. Frankie's the owner and he's awesome. I can tell you all about him. I can rave all about him. So I love that, Jay. I love that you talk about how deeply they care, but how, man? How do we get people to actually care? How do we get Jay to say Phil Gerbishak is my favorite podcaster ever? Like what's that going to take, man? Do I got to pay you or what?
So it's think of two words. How do we do this? How do we resonate deeper or become their favorite? There's two words I want us to keep in mind. So one is alignment and the other is amplification. Did you align with them? Did you amplify them? And where I got this, so you find me right now partway through this journey to understand resonance, because it doesn't seem like something we talk often enough about. It's almost like, well, that team has the gift or that individual has the gift and somehow they create rabid fans, or they might have more budget than us, or we kind of like other that we might admire them, but we other them. It's like, I could never, they have something going on that we don't have access to. And I think just like people teach reach and revenue growth tactics, that resonance is very learnable. So how do we learn it? Well, then I start with the obvious questions. First, what is resonance? Why should we care about resonance? And we've kind of talked about that. Well, then it's like, well, this word pre-exists marketing, sales, business builders, right? Creators. It's from the sciences. So what can we learn from the science to bring over to our world? When you look at the science of resonance, what you're really talking about are frequencies. frequencies. So a very simple example is you're sitting on a swing and you're swinging at this natural frequency. And what a resonant frequency does, it is a second frequency introduced to that first one that imparts energy to it and thus amplifies it. So, an easy example with a swing is if I push you in a way that matches, that aligns with your natural frequency, you will go further faster from the norm, from equilibrium. So, if I push you right as you're about to swing forward, I have matched your natural frequency. I have now given you a resonant frequency. So, what do? You shoot forward, you go higher, or you go faster. But if I don't match that, if I'm not aligned with you, in other words, if I push you when, say, you're coming back to me, I'm introducing friction and dissonance, not resonance. So I'm actually slowing you down. Or if I'm pushing when you're already moving too far ahead, I whiff, I miss, or maybe I kind of sort of graze you, but my effort to add anything is really ineffectual. And so what we're trying to do here is say, first, before you do anything else, your communication, your message, your work needs to somehow immediately and irresistibly align with the experiences or beliefs or biases of the people you're trying to reach. And then you can march them every step of the way towards where you want them to go. And as a speaker, Phil, you get this. As a speaker, I get this. If you walk up onto a stage and you immediately just say, here's the big idea and why we need to change, you're not really going to reach anybody. So you have to start with, here's the goal we share. Here is what we want. We are aligned. Great. Here's how we're going about it today. Are we aligned still? Yes. Now, here are the problems with the way we're going about it today. Let me give you an alternative and let me show you what this is like. Come with me on this journey. So, literally, what you're doing, whether it's a speech, a blog post, a podcast, a live streaming video show, a tagline, a giant project or brand culture for new employees, whatever you're doing that's received by others, the first and most important step is you feel like I am so aligned with that. And you hear these phrases like, yes, this, right? Or, oh, wow, that's speaking to my soul. What they're saying is, this maps to my life experience. You totally get me. So I'm going to start going with you. So the way I'd sum this up is resonance is the sudden urge to act when a message or an experience aligns so closely with your own life experience that your emotions, your thoughts, and even your abilities feel amplified. And we've all experienced that. It's that moment of like, I gotta have that. I gotta subscribe to that. I gotta keep listening to this person. I gotta go with them. Right? It's that initial alignment because then you feel amplified. So when we think resonance and we're trying to do that, the how-to part of this, first, deeply align. Second, you amplify them. And where you point that amplification is we have more content. We have an additional experience you can subscribe to or buy. We have a product or service, right? You can harness that emotion and point it towards something that they deeply care about because you've shown them why they should care. And you are then meeting that desire.
Wow. That makes it, honestly, it sounds so simple, Jay. Like, get aligned, right? Of course, right? Hey, you get me, so I'm going along with you. Makes sense, right? And then amplify, actually act on that energy to make it even more so. Sounds so simple. So why don't we do this, Jay? Why aren't we
Yeah.
doing this? What's the crux, man? Because it does sound simple. Like when you say it, I'm like, yeah, I mean that's why you're here today. I read you talk about this. I'm like, yeah, I want to hear about this. I get you. So I'm going with you here on
Right.
resonance.
That's kind of where you find me is like, so why aren't we doing this? I think part of it is we don't have language for it. We haven't given form and function to this nebulous idea of resonance. Because what I'm met with when I talk publicly about this idea so far, and I hope the thing like the book is in my horizon and my podcast and my newsletter are where I'm kind of bringing stories to light and scientific ideas and new ideas and questions. Like it's a public journey that I'm on. But I hope what ends up happening is at some point we can figure out the language, the method to the madness, the form and function to something that feels elusive. Because everyone's like, yeah, absolutely, I want to resonate. I just don't want to be liked or known. I want to be loved. I want them to say, you are my pick. You are my favorite. Absolutely. And also at the expense of the competitive set, right? I'd prefer yours, even if yours isn't the most well known or the most well resourced. I pick you instead, right? Every brand wants that, every movement, every creator, every project. Um, so why haven't we figured this out? Well, partly maybe we don't have language. I think partly is we don't know where to diagnose the problem. And so one of the things I'm working through is like, well, is there a consistent methodology behind people that resonate deeply with their fans and spark action? And I think so is the answer. I think so. And I think there's like four things. You can almost picture this like a flywheel that creates passionate fans. Tentatively, let's call this the flywheel of favoritism, because I'm an English lit major. And if you don't speak in alliteration 50% of the time, you don't get a return on your degree. So let's call it the flywheel of favoritism. But really, what this is for is like your work delivered in such a way that you create passionate fans. The flywheel of, okay, so the first possible moment, the first sort of tip of the spear, if you will, to start like getting into your world as a brand or creator is to say something that matters. So in a podcast, for example, in a show, that's the premise. It's like before I even subscribe, the premise can speak to someone and provide them motivation to subscribe. And I think we've all encountered those where like we hear the description of the show and we're like, oh my gosh, I am so in. Also, Phil, I know you, you're going to love this show. I'm going to refer it to people before I even experience it, right? So are we saying something that matters? Are we providing motivation to subscribe? And so there's a whole lot of work to be done around that. It's not just your topics, it's your hook. It's not just what you cover, it's how you cover it, which gives people a reason why they should care. The second part of the flywheel is hold attention. Don't just grab it. We're all in the business of trying to grab attention. But can you hold it? Can you actually get people to spend real time with you? Because a barrier to developing any relationship and becoming, your favorite thing is they need to spend time with you. They need to understand what you're about and invest potentially hours with you. So have you learned story structure? Have you learned what an open loop is? Have you learned how to create, in podcast parlance again, the golden rule of audio and show running, get them to the end. They hit play, be paranoid that they're going to hit stop. Well, you look at like our space, B2B podcasts or B2B anything, it's almost like we fly in the face of that all the time because we start with the most boring stuff. It's housekeeping, it's summarizing, it's, oh, Phil, yeah, good to see you. We met at that thing that once. No one cares, right? Like grip them from the jump and then open up loops. In other words, introduce questions, tension, and stakes such that they want to get the resolution later. And that continues until the very end. And oh, by the way, we have something else to interest you after this, a new episode, a new project, what have you. So say something that matters, get them to the end, provide motivation to subscribe and motivation to stay. And the third and fourth pieces of this are to connect emotionally. In other words, deploy your personality. And this is why we're living through the rise of creators, both in-house at brands and individually. People want to connect with human quirks and biases and beliefs, responsibly. Not, I believe this to the detriment of evolving and, updating my knowledge, but I believe this because it feels like the vision. We all want to go there and you want to come with me. Or I believe this because that feels broken and this feels better. And then you get to know Phil's quirks. Why does Phil wear those glasses? Who is Phil, right? I need to know your quirks and you need to deploy your personality into some kind of experience so that I can connect with you on an emotional human level. So motivation to subscribe, motivation to stay, that's saying something that matters and holding attention. And now by inserting your personality, you provide motivation to act. Because when Phil asks me, do you want this next thing? Or do you want to do this? I'm more likely to say yes than if a logo in a Twitter feed asks me to do that, right? Or if Phil on Twitter asks me, I'm less likely than if it's Phil on Twitter plus the podcast, plus the video series, plus the book, because I've gotten to know who Phil is. And the final thing that kills all of this, I think, is stagnation. It's so hard to just get people to like opt in and stay and connect with you. But if you just do the same thing over and over and over again, and you never innovate and you never evolve or test, even the most potent emotion is going to wear away over time. And so stagnation is the enemy. So the fourth and final piece of this is reinvention, right? So it's your premise, it's your experience, it's your personality, and now finally it's your premise, or sorry, your reinvention, your experimentation. Am I going to take what's working and lean into it and explore it more deeply? Am I going to try new things to delight you and surprise you, even though you get the joke because you're my loyal fans? And if I can retain that ability, if I can constantly say something that matters, hold your attention, connect emotionally as a person, and reinvent over time, in other words, avoid stagnation, the flywheel persists because I can continue to say something that matters and on it goes. And all of a sudden I have this virtuous cycle that any one individual that connects with me is probably more likely to become a passionate fan. In other words, I'm probably more likely to resonate really deeply with them. So this is hard won. This is over time. There is no instant, like, here's the blueprint. Here's the hack. Here's the silver bullet. I had someone on Twitter say, gather up all these silver bullets, cowboy, and let's start firing them, as a criticism of the usual like marketing advice thread on Twitter. And that just so says it for me. This is a way of operating. Are you operating in such a way that you resonate? It is not do this one thing today and you'll grow reach, right? That's what we're sold. This is a way of seeing the world. This is a way of operating. The way creativity is a way of operating. So that is the messy first stab at the methodology that I've come at so far.
Ooh, well, I dig that, and I can get behind that. It makes sense to me, right? Saying something that matters. Okay, got that, right? We hope that we all do. So let's check that box. That's probably easy. But then the holding attention, probably pretty darn hard, right?
I'd back you
That's
up.
a big miss.
I'd back you
Really?
up a step, Phil. It is so hard to say something that matters. Think about any podcast. Every B2B podcast you can white label and call it the same thing, which is just talking topics with
Huh.
experts. Why, like if I white labeled a chat show, why do I know it's you, Phil? Because it's what you care about. It's the angle you take. So an easy example is the B2B tech company Lessonly, which actually just got acquired
Yeah.
by Seismic. So Lessonly sells learning and development software for sales teams, right? So they have they told me they have 79 North American competitors, to say nothing of the global market. And they all ran the same playbook for years. Tips and tricks and expertise to be good at sales, right? That was their marketing playbook, just like their peers. Well, last year they decided the thing we care about, our hook or angle on these topics, is that we want to make sales or alert salespeople to the fact that their jobs are things to be practiced. They wanted to own the idea of practice. That was their belief, what I'd call like a bright line belief, that they drew that line in the sand, that there's some people that believe this and some people that don't. It's not about the gift of gab. It's not about the best tech. It's not about a script. It is about whether or not your sales team commits to the craft of being in sales. In other words, this can be practiced. So instead of sales tips on the podcast, they created a show called Practice First, which was an exploration to understand who is a world-class practicer. Let's learn how they think about and execute their practice. So we back in sales, and we'll do that translation job for you, can learn to practice better and do better sales as a result. So they'd talk to sales executives like their peers, but also they'd talk to sommeliers and Olympians and all these people. So they have said something that matters. That says nothing about the experience. We're not at hold attention yet. When I opt into that podcast, what's it like? That's a whole different bag of cats, and that matters too. But I find that especially in B2B, mostly what we're doing is just talking about topics. And we're not actually driving towards the emotional reason somebody would care and your vision for where you want them to go. And you know as well as anyone, as a teacher and a speaker, like that's the meaningful work, is like in a way you're developing your IP, your ideas first. And where do those manifest? Well, now it's a podcast, it's a blog, it's a speech, it's a book, etc. So say something that matters. It kills a ton of brands and a ton of creators.
That's interesting. Yeah. Now that you say it, totally makes sense, right? But I would think, I don't know, maybe I'm just naive, right? I would think if it doesn't matter, why the heck are you going to make it, right? I mean, that's my thought, right? Like if I didn't care, I'm not going to make it.
You've been around enough brands. You've been around enough brands to know that things that don't matter get created all the time.
Well, okay, that true enough, right? I agree with that, but at the same time, I don't know. And maybe it's just I'm thinking about this personally, right? Like I'm not making it something. Like as soon as I stop giving a crap, like it's done, man. If I don't think it matters, if it's not making a difference, I'm not going to play anymore. Like it's just a waste of time for me. Like right. That's like check the box marketing. Hey, I mean, honestly, man, that's why I'm not on TikTok, right? Like I don't care. Like not that it isn't good. It's probably good for somebody. It's not good for me. I'm not wasting my time there because I can't create content that matters. But I watch people, I watch them blow up. I'm like, hey, wow, good for you. Like, hey, good on you, right? So interesting. Okay, so I buy that. So holding attention, right? Okay, probably even harder, right? But entertain people, give them a hook, right? Those open loops. I think storytelling is so underrated for brands anymore, and combining that with the personality behind it, not just once upon a time and it's long, like that doesn't play, right? So why don't this sounds to me like about we're talking B2B here. How come so many organizations don't get behind their personalities and actually ride that pony in and then have a marketer, right, help them open loops? Because frankly, I don't know, and maybe it's again, just maybe me here. I would think I'd want a Jay Acunzo to host my show I'd want, I'm not as good as you, but I'd like to be as good as you, right? And I'm aspirationally going there. So why don't more brands like say, okay, internally, I've got someone. They might be in accounting or in marketing or in sales or in, whatever,
Yeah.
engineering. Why don't they just ride that pony, man, and help them be even better so people can connect more emotionally with a message that matters?
Vision or lack
Mm,
thereof. So
okay.
I fundamentally changing the way you see the world or see the work has far more impact on your work success than a list of steps that somebody publishes on their blog and says
Yeah.
do it this way.
Yeah.
Being someone who, so the analogy is compasses versus directions. It is, a compass is far more valuable if you know how to use it. If you know how to walk into any scenario and find true north and figure out your bearings and navigate your way forward, you're unstoppable. Directions are profoundly limiting because as soon as a tree is across the path, as soon as you encounter an obstacle, and you will, those directions are rendered useless. It's like the ants that you see where you can like put a twig in their path and they freak out. It's like, I don't know if you've seen A Bug's Life, the old Pixar movie. It's like, I'm lost because a leaf fell in front of the ant. That's how we treat our audiences in B2B, which is profoundly disrespectful, number one, but it also does train from the moment we get into the workplace. It trains B2B practitioners in whatever job to think that way, to look for, I need the blueprint. I need the one simple step. I can't consume this experience unless it's chunked for me and there's a key takeaways box at the end, right? But far more useful is a think for yourself or is a navigator than a direction follower. So a lot of this is a lack of vision where either people haven't been taught or they haven't been given permission, because sometimes you need that confidence boost to just say, the way you see the world really does matter, and let's deploy that. Right. So the way you see the work right now is this profoundly kind of like constrained tiny little box of like, to be in marketing, to be in sales, to be in B2B right now is to do it this way. Well, what are the absolute most resonant projects in the world, in your world, and what can we steal from them? What is a musician doing if not betting on their own craft and personality? What are all these people that say, I'm now on TikTok, and woof, massive followers just come to them, right? The stuff marketers want is being achieved by folks way outside of marketing, and they're not achieving it by looking like everybody else. They're achieving it by betting on, if I have a unique style and premise, I have a point of view over these topics that, yes, everyone else is talking about, but I talk about it this way, or I play that craft or create that art this way, that I might be able to bring some people way into my corner rather than have lots of people just know I exist, right? That's the say something that matters conundrum. That's the premise conundrum. I might be able to hold attention better by speaking with intrigue, by speaking with questions, by challenging the status quo instead of accepting it and pandering to it, right? Instead of looking at what are people searching for, I will deliver them. There's some of that. Instead of what are they asking for? Well, what do I think they need? How do I deliver it to them in a way they receive it? Right. So, and
Mm,
then that third piece of the flywheel, that personality. Why are they not betting on personalities? Well, some are. I'm fortunate to host a lot of client shows or develop them for other talent. But a lot of them, they just think, well, we have to be a logo. We have to be a factory that is efficient. And therefore, our personalities, who could leave us at any time, are actually liabilities instead of assets. And I think that's the problem. Is number one is I need to catch lightning in a bottle. I need Phil. And if Phil leaves my business, I'm screwed. But the second part of this is, well, behind Phil is smart process. Again, form and function to the nebulous, but powerful. You can put process and repeatability, the stuff brands want, to on-air talent, to premise development, to story structure, the structuring part of it all. A lot of what we feel like we're looking at is, I need to go and get lightning and have it strike over here, instead of, no, you can bottle this. Like, these are solved process driven problems, so let's use the process to solve our problems. And if Phil leaves us, that's sad, but we could do it again with certainty, right? So it's the vision, it's the understanding that I can see the work that way. And if you change, if you shift to think, oh wow, there's form and function to this, there's repeatability and process to this, it is a practice, it is a craft to resonate. It is not, I hope I get struck by lightning and things go well. Now all of a sudden you feel empowered to go to Phil and say, why don't you come on board and do a show with us? Why don't we have that relationship? Why don't we hire you outright and have you be our in-house creator? Right? That feels less risky now, because I know underpinning you is some structure, is some process, is some language. And so I guess the punchline to all this, Phil, is like, what I'd really love to do is not try to like give you a silver bullet and oversimplify resonance, but to make it accessible as a learnable skill. That's what I'd like to do. Because if it's a learnable skill and you feel like the person who resonates has left your company, well, the next person steps up or the next person steps in because it is indeed learnable. It is not a gift from the muse.
Wow. That and that's encouraging, right? Let's be clear, right? Having a process and developing that and learning resonance is super encouraging, because if it was lightning model, right? Because there's only one Oprah, there's only one Jay Acunzo, there's only one Phil Gerbishak. If that's it, right? That's like, well, I'm done with that. Okay, that doesn't work. But instead, we're then able to really, okay, let's work on that process. Let's work towards resonance. And
Yeah.
interestingly enough, right, it makes me think a little bit of 37 Signals. Wasn't their book, either their book or their blog, wasn't it like signal versus noise, right? That we want to
Yes.
amplify the right signal,
Right.
right?
Right.
And stop with the crap, the noise, if you will, that isn't working. So that just made me think of that. So that's,
Yeah.
maybe that's another way that we can help folks see resonance as signal over noise, right? Instead of noise, like, to your point, right? Like if I'm coming this way and and you're trying to push me the other way, it's like that isn't going to work. Like you're just being noisy. You're being, pollution, if you will, right? So, that's interesting, Jay.
And I've
Yeah,
heard,
go ahead.
coming out of the tech startup world as I have, I've heard so many founders and investors say like, well, we need some marketing because we got to get this in front of the right people. No, you don't. I mean, that's part of the equation, but that's like saying we're going to build a very successful team. And like now we have a bench on the sidelines. Like it is just so inadequate, so insufficient to say, I'm going to get this in front of people. That is marketing and sales. These are not jobs built to get in front of people. The whole point is to make sure they care. Are you saying something that matters? Are you holding their attention? Are you connecting emotionally? And are you avoiding stagnation over time? Like that's the job. So this is not some gift. This is not some nice to have. This drives business. This drives revenue and results, whether your results look like revenue or they look like a movement that sparked a change in the world. I talk a lot about responsible resonance because the very same things I'm finding and teaching could be used to take advantage and exploit. And that's what we see with like spammy, clickbaity headlines, for example. That is an exploitative form of the open loop. It is a good storytelling philosophy used to exploit someone, and you see this with like Twitter bros who like, I grew this brand from 0 to 7 billion in 6 weeks. Here are all my secrets. And, or here, take my course because I have the secrets. They're exploiting people's insecurities that they don't know something or that they need a result and don't feel self-empowered to achieve it. And so they have to rely on what I'm calling the think boy industrial complex, which are all these, people trying to be famous and very self-serious avatars in their Twitter bios. And, I'm going to promote my next course and try to take advantage of you versus the other authors and thinkers who play in the same domains as those folks. And we all know these people who feel generous, who feel like normal human beings trying to help you achieve your best. Because they're trying to say to you, you have what it takes. Let's give some guardrails and goalposts to that versus I have the knowledge over here and I'm hoarding it. Both of those types of people can resonate, but there's a responsibility we have Spider-Man style with great power comes that responsibility to use this stuff responsibly, to say to somebody, hey, you know what? We're in this together. We're going someplace together. You have what it takes. You can do this. Not I can teach you. You can do this. And let's give you the tools necessary to build whatever the hell you want. Not according to my blueprint, but according to yours.
Wow. Again, great encouragement. And I would say counter to your point, right? A lot of the what do you call them? Tech bro?
The Think Boy Industrial Complex.
Think Boy. Yeah, the Think Boy Industrial Complex. So that should be the title of your book, Jay. I think that's good, right? And Ayn Rand can be the main character, and we'd be set there. So that's funny.
A past version of me was very snarky about the marketing world. I'm trying to get better at building people up instead of tearing down what we're against. I want to fight for something instead of just purely against. So, but that's very tempting.
Yeah. That's awesome, man. Awesome. So, your Unthinkable podcast is fantastic. And you mentioned that you build some of these podcasts for brands, right? Like you've hosted, you show run. So talk to me a little bit about that.
Sure.
And the work that you're doing, man.
Yeah, it's part and parcel of why I'm so fascinated with resonance. It's, a show, you're spending such meaningful time, you're getting to know people. It does contain all of those things. The premise is how you say something that matters. The format of the episode, the structuring of it is how you hold attention. The personality, the talent is how you connect emotionally. And then there's this necessary reinvention that happens over time. Even if it's not proactive, you're doing a next episode. So you're getting better all the time. And I think we can harness that more proactively, but it just contains all the pieces to point towards passionate fans, right? To say like, this is my favorite thing, or that's my favorite thinker, or whatever. So I fell in love with shows a long time ago, and both Unthinkable, which is kind of the storytelling vehicle I love the most, and shows that I'm developing behind the scenes as a developer and a showrunner, or hosting for clients on the microphone or on camera. What these brands all have in common that I'm working with is they believe that their job is to connect more deeply in a world trending shallow, which has all sorts of benefits. Like, summed up in tech parlance, the lifetime value of their audience goes up and their cost of acquisition goes down, because everybody who encounters a show and spends time with it, they are more valuable. They're going to take more action. They're going to go deeper with you. They're also going to refer you new business for free. Don't we all want that? And so your acquisition costs go down. So that is the hardest, coldest, most capitalistic explanation for why shows matter. But I love the emotional stuff. I love the ability to own a theme outright in the market. And that's your corner forever, the way Lessonly owns practice among sales enablement and sales training tools. I love the idea that you're not expanding the top of the funnel so much as straightening it, because you're developing real relationships with people, even if it's done at scale. I love the idea that, honestly, there's nuance to these vehicles. I don't need a 17-part Twitter thread where every 280 character burst is supposed to somehow contain the truth. Those are maybe driving towards the truth, but it's not the actual truth. Let's turn things over. Let's look at things with nuance. Let's impart wisdom on a real deep level so people can leave not following your list, but thinking for themselves. And every time they bring up their great work to other people, they're going to be like, oh, you know where I'm learning this? Well, it's from Phil's show. You should check it out. So there's so many benefits to building a show today, and all the way down at the bottom of the list is you get to build an audience, right? Like, that's what we start with, but that's actually the bottom of the barrel of all these amazing, powerful, very business focused benefits. And so it's fun for me to try and craft those vehicles for other brands.
Yeah. Wow. Straightening the funnel. I think that, there you go, Jay. There's another title you could run with, right? If you're thinking about this, because I do think, to your point, right? I think that really should be the goal, right? We want the right people that we're talking to that care
Yes.
deeply as possible, right? That we're aligned with, that are amplifying our message, and we're amplifying their energy. Super, super good, man. So Jay, I'm going to put up a link here for your Unthinkable
Oh, thank
podcast,
you so much.
pod.link. Yeah, of course, man. Yeah, pod.link/Jay gets you to the Unthinkable podcast. Jay, I've been following your work for a long time. We've had a few conversations. I always enjoy it. But any last words here to get started and get on the path to resonance?
Phil, thank you so much for this. This was a total treat. The only thing I would say is to develop, if you're looking for a place to start, develop an actual premise. And I'll give you a little framework to help start. XY premise pitch. This is a project about X, your topics, not differentiating. Doesn't matter, doesn't resonate as deeply. This is a project about X. Unlike other projects about X, only we Y. When you nail the why, when you nail the hook, you start to say something that matters. So that is the densest, tiniest little starting point. The most important thing is to develop your premise, and maybe that XY premise pitch can get you started.
Awesome. Awesome, Jay. Really appreciate it. Again, get to know Jay Acunzo more on the Unthinkable podcast. Check him out on LinkedIn or on Twitter. He's always sharing smart stuff, and I always appreciate him. Thanks, Jay. Good to
Thanks,
spend
Phil.
time with you,
You're
man.
the best.
Thanks, man.